Hello and welcome to my home again. We will once again be talking about how to style a wig, or rather, here's the thing. The other one is more how I plan why I did the wig the way that I did it. It was supposed to be a general type of video where I was like, this is in general how I plan my wigs. It just became me using the cloud wig as an example so much that it just became me talking about how I plan my cloud wig. But with that said, what I mean is that I would recommend that you watch the planning video before you watch this one to understand why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, because this will mostly cover how I'm doing it, if that makes sense. And even though the how is so much fun, and of course, to see and learn, I do recommend watching the why I do the wig that I did, since that type of thinking can be applied to other wigs. But with that said, I hope you will learn something from this video. I will just go through all of it, all the things that I did for this wig and how I did them. If there is anything in the video that you would want me to go into more detail about, let me know, and I will make a specific type of video about that. If you want to see specifically how I sew in wefts, or specifically my cutting techniques, let me know. And I have edited the video of the styling on my computer, so I will be watching over here to see what I'm doing and explain as I see. Is my plan. As like a sports commentator, I will be commentating on my work, if that makes sense. I will see how this works. Hopefully it's nice. But okay, let's go. Okay, so first of all, let's look into what I'm actually using to do this wig. So this is how the base wig looked before I did anything to it. It is an Arda Jareth, I believe. I can probably put up on the screen somewhere what wig it was. I bought it because I bought an Aerith wig from Arda, and I just decided to throw this in there. The good thing with Arda is that their base cap is a very good size for my huge head, so that was a nice thing. It was, however, the exact same color as Coscraft's pale ash blonde, which meant that I could have just bought a pale ash blonde Coscraft wig and it would have saved me a lot of money. Anyway, but it's good that the base wig from Arda is at least big enough for my head, so I didn't have to increase the size in any way. It is also quite a lot of volume, which is nice, so it was good. I would have had to sew in more wefts if it had been a Coscraft base. But yeah, so this is just like a look of how it looked before I did any work. You can see how thin the wefts are in the back. It's not thin, but it's too thin for what I need. And it's also very long. The neck area especially was very, very thin, which is what I wanted to try and show there, because that is the part that I will thicken up the most. And if I pull up the hair, you see the wig cap through it, which is also one of the main things that I try to fix. This is the inside of the wig, so this means that this is just also as a before of the process, so you can see that how the tracks are made and how the wefts are flipped inside on the ear part, like it's in and then it's flipped inside. And you can see the amount of wefts. I think this is a very transparent way of seeing how much thickness you've added through wefts, is that once you look inside and you have added all the wefts, you will be able to very easily tell how much you've added. So that's the base way again, compared to the other parts that I used, which is right to it. I used some wefts from Coscraft in Pale Ash Blonde that I had from before. I've saved them for like ages, and I used a kit wig because I ran out of wefts. Okay, since I knew that the wefts from Costcraft wasn't going to be enough for what I needed, I decided to de-weft this kit wig that I showed you guys. And de-wefting, what I do is that you look very, very, very closely on the wefts. It's some stitches that keeps the wefts attached to the elastic. So I take a seam ripper to rip those stitches so that I can remove the weft. It's not more complicated than that. This is how I store the wefts once before I use them. So I pin all my wefts to a piece of fleece fabric that I've hung over a hanger. This is just because I find it doesn't make a mess. If I keep my wefts just on a table, it just becomes a mess, and it's so incredibly difficult to not have them tangle. And now that I have a cat, she would most definitely mess that up. And this just keeps everything very neat, and it's very nice. It's also a very easy way to quickly get a visual on how long the weft pieces are. So if I know that I need a really long one, you can tell because I've hung them all on the same height, so I can see how long they are. So this is just how I store them before I sew them into the wig. And this is me trying to show you that there are two different types of wefts. I would say there are probably a billion more types, but there are weft types that have all the hairs are equally long on the wefts. They're all the same length. And then there are wefts that are where there are a bunch of long hairs, but then there are a bunch of tiny, tiny, tiny short hairs on them as well. A little fluffy weft, which has like a puffy root, and the other ones that have just long, smooth, equally long. And those types of like puffy wefts are usually sewn to create volume in a wig, and are usually sewn in particular places to kind of build coverage in the wig cap and such. And for me, when I sew my wefts into a new wig, I want to make sure that I pick the right type for the right area. So this is me trying to show how I can tell fast what type of wig weft it is. So if I pull it around my finger tight, I can see tiny, 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 tiny baby hairs like sticking up around it because it's not laying flat. The tiny, tiny baby hairs indicate that it is one of these puffy wefts. Also, if I lay it down on this white table, I can quite easily see that, okay, there's a lot of volume down along the weft. It is one of these puffy wefts. And then compared to this, which is not a puffy weft. So this one, you don't get the little tiny baby hairs when you pull it, and you don't have the type of volume if you compare it on a table. And why this is important is because I want the puffy wefts, the ones with the tiny hairs, I want those when I sew the neck hair part. Because in the neck hair and along the neckline is where I want the most volume and the most amount of tiny, tiny hairs, because it will help create coverage. And I want and need as much coverage as humanly possible along the neckline, because since Cloud's neck hair is pulled up and out, I need that extra hair and poof to cover the wig, essentially. And so I want to save those for along this part, basically along this part. And the normal wefts where everything is equally long, I can use them in like all the middle parts where it doesn't really matter as much, because I have so much of these long wefts, and so I wanted to treasure the puffy ones, basically. So that's that. So I take a lot of care in where I sew what type of weft. And this is me just showing the fact that I'm sewing it on. I use a curved needle to sew on the wefts because it is a lot easier. This is me showing some progress of how it's getting puffier. And here you can see the inside of the wig again. So this is why I showed the preview of the inside of the wig prior, is that now you can clearly see, like on top of the head versus the bottom half of the head. The bottom half has doubled the amount of wefts. So it's a lot tighter from like weft to weft. It's so much tighter. Compared to the top part where you can see it is the normal amount. So this is a good way for me to like see the progress that I'm making, which is nice. For Cloud, I had to try and figure out a new way of making neck hair, a new way for me at least. I don't know if this is something that other people do already, because before, when I've done neck hairs, I've done them in a ponytail way. So I've sewn a line of wefts on the inside of the wig will automatically create baby hairs for your wig. I did this with Jessie, with my Jessie wig. So I used puffy wefts for that, so that once I just pull them up in a ponytail, I already had natural baby hairs. But for Cloud, I needed a lot more coverage, and I couldn't use the ponytail method because not all his hair is pulled in one direction, and also I needed the wig to stay flexible. And I can't sew one long weft along because it will not be flexible. So what I did instead of doing a long weft all along the neckline is that I extended all of the wefts that already go like this. I extended all of them like a centimeter or something more to then flip them on the inside of the wig, because this really helps hiding the edge of the wig cap while still keeping some elasticity. Of course, because I'm sewing into elastics so much for all of these wefts, a lot of the elasticity will be removed. So it will become a lot stiffer, but it will still have some elasticity. This is also why it's extra specially important that you have a wig head that is the same size as your head, so that once you sew everything, it is already stretched into size of your head, so it doesn't become too small. And this is me. So if we look at the video, this is me showing all these long bits that have been extended from the weft. So all of these wefts have like a little extra tab going off the end. And these are the little ones that will be folded over onto the inside. And I just sew them like I sewed all the other wefts, and this will help hide the wig cap. This was revolutionary to me. I have never done this before. This is probably something that's like super basic and maybe a lot of people do it, and in that case I'm sorry. But I was at least very impressed. I was very hyped about this solution. I also think it just looked surprisingly natural, because if you do them this way, they just, I don't know, they just look really, really good. Because then when you pull it, it doesn't look like just one flat row. It looks very unnatural if you do that, but I don't know, I really like this. Something else that I realized when I did the neck hair is that I still wanted more hair. And I wasn't really concerned about the wig cap anymore. Now I was just concerned about the wefts in general of the wig. It was just too thin. I needed more hair to make sure that you wouldn't see through into the wig cap. So what I did is that I would alter the wefts, so that not all wefts were pointing in the same direction. Before, all the wefts were pulling, like pointing down. Now I went over every weft, and on top of that weft I sewed another weft that was pointing upwards. So where there was a weft previously that was going like this, pointing down, on top of that I would take another one where it was pointed upwards, and I would sew that. This helped create even more volume because now the hair is going in all directions, and while still not reducing more elasticity, because there wasn't really any space left to attach more wefts. Like I could have squeezed in more wefts in between, but if I did, I would have removed pretty much all elasticity, and I didn't want to do that. So this way, I'm not removing elasticity, and I'm creating more volume and more poof. And something else that I did is that I decided to sew in even more wefts on the inside neck tab. Like, you know that you have the ear tabs on the wig, and then you have a neck tab. On the bottom of the neck tab, I sewed in more wefts. And why I did this is because this method where I did this for the neck hair, like this, where I just flipped in the tabs, obviously that doesn't work for the neck tab because they, like, you can't flip them in that direction. So there I did more like the ponytail method because the neck tab is already stiff and hard, so the elasticity doesn't really matter. So I sewed in some wefts on the inside of the wig so that once they came outside I could just flip them to cover the edge of the wig cap. This is me showing just some progress of me sewing wefts going up and down. I also cut the wefts pretty much always while I go, because it was just easier to maintain, because the long wefts make me sad. So I'm cutting the wefts as I go. And then we come to the crucial step, which is actually heat setting these neck hairs for cloud. The way we do this is with heat, because it is a lot easier if you heat style the wig as much as possible before you go in with hairspray, because this means that when you wear the cosplay, especially again with Cloud has a polo shirt, like has a high collar. The high collar will rub against the wig. Like no amount of hairspray will be able to keep that hair standing up when there's a collar constantly like rubbing against it. But if you heat style the wig, you kind of melt the hair in place, so that even once there is friction with the collar, it has still been forced to stay upright. So it will just make it a lot easier. And the way I did this is actually with a curling iron, or like a curling wand. Usually I style with a hair dryer or with a flat iron, but my flat iron is actually too chunky and fat, so it wouldn't get into these tiny crevices, like super close to the baby hair, because I need to get up like right on that edge of the wig cap and like push it up, like so it doesn't, like if this is the wig cap edge, I don't want, and this is like it's in the inside, I don't want it to go like I want it to go like like I need it to go close against the edge and up, because otherwise it won't cover it. And the flat iron is too fat, it won't get in there. And the hair dryer is too weak. It is not producing the amount of heat that I actually need and the precision that I need. The steamer could have worked, maybe. I don't know if that would have been the right amount of heat either. I needed like a lot of heat. So I'm pushing the curling wand along the wig cap edge to make it stand up. kind of like combing it, like petting it into position with the curling wand. My curling wand is super warm because it doesn't have a heat setting, which is insane, which is why I never use it for pretty much anything. So it gets super, super warm. So it actually kind of fried my wig, and I had to try and save it. But get a curling wand that has a heat setting, and that worked really, really well for me. So I could just push up the neck hair into place, and then I took out tiny, 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 tiny baby hairs out of there to like cover up the transition and make it look a bit more natural. There's the baby. And here you can see the little baby hairs. So for my wig, this is all the foundation work that I had to do. And when I say foundation work, is what I mean is all the work that I had to do to the foundation of the wig before I actually start styling it. And because I didn't have to dye anything for this wig, I didn't have to ventilate anything. I talked about that in my why and planning video about why I decided not to ventilate, for now at least. And then once I'm done with the foundation, I start with texturing and rough cutting to get a general shape. This goes for even the craziest of spikiest of wigs, which is for sure what Cloud is. So even Cloud gets some texturizing and rough cutting first. So this is me really rough cutting. I'm just cutting chunks off the wig because it's so difficult to work with when it's way too long. And I'm not cutting randomly. I have a reference picture on my computer when I do this. So I pull out the hair in the direction that the hair here, like here on the skull, where is this hair on the skull? Where is it gonna go? It's gonna go here-ish, rough-ish, probably gonna be about this long. Okay, then let's cut it here. And I do that with the reference pictures so that I don't accidentally cut anything too short. But so I still like don't keep too much length anywhere because there's no real point of me trying to texturize a wig that is way too long and then just cut everything off. So this is just my desperate attempt of trying to tame this lion mane. And I do this again with pretty much all my wigs. So I hold out the hair, I take a chunk of hair, I hold it in roughly the position it's supposed to be in once the wig is done, and I cut it slightly longer than that. And I do that over and over and over again until I feel like the wig is in a place where it has been roughly cut into shape close enough that I notice that I start to go in with more detail cutting. And you can see that I've already started doing my teasing cutting. A very cute girl on Instagram told me what this technique is called. I already forgot. And it is the technique of where I cut hair while teasing, basically. So I pull when I cut the hair is like this. I cut with the scissors like this. I find that it helps giving a more feathered look to the hair when I cut. I didn't have feathering scissors for thinning scissors for the longest time, and this was the only way that I did it. So I use this motion of cutting for pretty much always. I do point cutting just like this when there's really fine detail stuff. I almost never cut like this. I did it in the beginning of here, as you could see, but it was because it was so much. I just wanted to get rid of it. And and I just do that over and over and over again until I find that I'm close enough to the shape where it's when I start to notice that I'm doing this, because it's beginning to become detail cutting, then I leave that area and I move on to the next area, because this is not the part where I'm styling the wig. This is the part where I'm just roughly getting it into shape. And it is also no point in me texturizing the wig when it's too long. It's no point in me trying to heat style the wig when it's too long. It is going to be a lot easier once it is roughly in the correct shape. There's so much footage of me doing this. Like, I have so, like, this is such, like, I had to cut off, like, so much footage for this video. I recorded so much. I don't know what to do with all the recordings. Like, maybe I should just do everything into, like, a huge master compilation video, if that's something you would be interested in, and just a mega long time lapse or whatever, something. If anyone is interested in that, let me know and I might do that. Say hi to Mochi. You see your tail. Wow. She's a fluffy baby. A fluffy baby. Well, that was that. And then when I'm starting to get like close enough-ish, I'm starting to heat style it. For cloud, that means that I need to start getting some volume in here, and I need the hair to start going in the right direction, because right now all the hair is going down. So much of the hair needs to go up and out. So I go in there with a hair dryer on the warmest setting, and I'm just blasting the hair. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to pull the hair in the direction that it's supposed to be while blasting it, because with the wind, that's how I'm gonna use it. That's also why I find it difficult to work with a steamer, because the steamer doesn't have any wind and I use the wind to my advantage. So the wind, I'm pulling the wind in the direction of where I want the hair to go. My hands are also always like, my hands are so cold. So I heat up the hair in the direction with the wind, like, whoom, the hair is going, whoo, and then I get in with my hands and like pull the hair even more in that direction to like exaggerate it. And since my hands are so cold, the hair became warm by the hair dryer, then my hand goes through it and my hand is so cold, so it's smooths down. Mochi, what are you doing? Mochi is ruining my new fresh bedding. I just fixed it. Okay, whatever. So I just go over and over and over, and I do that over and over and over. And then once I did that, I realized that, okay, it's still not short enough, so I need to cut even more off. And here's where I'm also starting to go in with the thinning scissor, because now that I have a thinning scissor, it's very nice to just quickly get some like weight off there. And I'm just iterating on that. Heat, pulling it in the direction that I wanted to, cutting once I realize that nope, it's too long, and I go over and over and over and do that as much as possible, because again, I want the wig to be styled with mostly heat if possible, before I go in with any type of hairspray, because if the wig is styled with heat, then I don't have to worry if there's any rain or if there's any smushing of the wig, because the heat will just bounce the wig back afterwards, so which is perfect. After I did the choco butt, I went into the front of the wig. So I tried to find the part that Clouds has. He has kind of like a whirl part, kinda. So I found where the whirl was, and I'm blowing again with a hairdryer with some heat where that whirl is, and I'm combing it. It's kind of like what I was doing with my hands before, in the direction of where I need the hair to spread out of, basically, to make that part extra exaggerated. Here I'm also showing how I am parting the wig. I part in like a zigzag motion because it helps hiding the wefts. So this is the part of all the hair that is going back to the choco butt and all the hair that's going to the front. But I do this type of zigzaggy parting for every spike or everything almost always, because it helps covering the wefts. Then I'm going into cutting again. It is always scary with these short wigs because it always needs to be cut a lot shorter than you think it has to be. So you think that you've cut enough and it's like, surely it cannot get any shorter than this. And then yikes, of course it is. So it's getting even shorter. Look at the baby. Look at the baby. Here you can see a perfect example of how I mean that I use the wind to my advantage when I use the hairdryer. When I use a hairdryer, I kinda try to use it as if it was a comb. I'm using the hairdryer to fly the hair into the direction that I want it to go. This is especially true for Final Fantasy wigs because they always that's a lie. Lately, they almost always have this natural anime hair where it's like it's not going into a complete spike, but it's still like defying gravity and spike-ish. It really helps having that movement instead of me holding the hair and blasting it with hairdryer and then waiting until I let it go. I did that for like Kingdom Hearts and stuff. It worked fine for Kingdom Hearts because it's so anime. But with these new Final Fantasy wigs, it's so realistic that if I do this combing motion with the hair, I'm training the hair with heat to hold this shape. And again, I prefer to do this over a steamer because with a steamer, I'm not getting the air. So I'm not getting this fluffy hair in the wind result that I want, and I'm getting it here with the hairdryer. Almost always the first part that I cut when I like actually start to like cut finer parts of the wig is that I try to cut the pieces that are going to be the closest to the ears, because if I get the ear pieces cut, then once the wig is on the wig head and also the bang, most often, because if I get the earpieces and the bang cut roughly the right length and placement, then once it's on the wig head, I can very easily imagine my face on the wig head because I see where the wig fits on me, because I can see where the ears are supposed to be with the earpieces fixed. If that makes sense. Here you can see I started to move on to some of the side hair and actually start to cut it. I realized that I cut too much and I sewed in extra wefts into the wig again because I cut off too much and I realized that I needed more volume and length. So I sewed in some extra wefts and I cut that as well. And I'm just cutting it roughly into the right-ish. And I do this, the same thing that I did before, where it's like, I take a piece of hair where it's like, okay, I'm not exactly like, okay, this is exactly where the spike is supposed to go. This is the exact amount of hair of this spike, that spike. I don't really do that in this stage. I just do like, okay, this hair is probably ish gonna be that spike and it's gonna be ish that long. And I cut it a little longer than that, but pretty much almost the exact length that it's supposed to be. And I do this because it makes it a lot more manageable, but when I try to find the exact spikes, like with Noctis, I have not done exact spikes because his wig is so fluffy. Cloud is actually a very spiky boy with pretty defined spikes, so I actually did go in and try to define the exact spikes that he has. And so usually I would rough cut it a lot more, pretty much just keep rough cutting until like the last minute where I start to set things. Here, since I knew that Cloud has some spikes that are a lot longer than other spikes, I can't do that to the same extent. I could keep rough cutting around the area where spikes were roughly the same length. So that's why I could cut a little bit along here, because here they are pretty much all the same length. Once I get here, Cloud has some spikes that are super long and some that are super short, so I can't really rough cut in those areas if I want it to be accurate. So I kind of left that alone. But what I did, now it's actually getting to the texturizing part, because now I've gotten to the point where it's like rough cutting isn't really gonna help anymore without the texturizing. So before I texturize the wig, is texturizing even a word? I don't know. But either way, before I start to create texture of the wig, I separated the big spike. Because Cloud has one spike that is like the spike. Nowadays in the new ones, it's not really one spike, it's like multiple spikes that makes the spike. But I separate the big spike so that I'm texturizing it in the right direction. Because I want to make sure that now that I heat and texturize the wig, I don't undo all this heat styling that I did. So I want the big spike to be teased into its big spike shape. I don't want to accidentally have it go any wrong way. So that is the one spike where I kind of find where it's supposed to be before I start texturizing. And you can see again that I did some tiny zigzagging around the spike part to hide the wefts. And how I texturized this wig is that I went in with a flat iron, and then I heat up the fibers, and then I use a teasing comb to violently back comb the wig, and then I let it cool in that shape before I then comb it out. And I do this to texturize the wig because if you have a textured wig, it's gonna help hold the styling a bit better, and it will also help with the volume. And Cloud hair is quite voluminous, so he needs all the volume that he can get, and this heating and teasing is a great way to do that. And the reason why I heat before I tease is to actually keep the teasing, because if I just tease and don't heat, then when I comb it out, it's just gonna go flat again, so it's not really gonna do anything. And the teasing is just basically creating a bunch of little microscopic kinks to create volume and to create a bit rougher texture. And this rougher texture is what's going to help keep the styling in place. And it's going to be a bit easier to kind of set in place than a sleek hair will. This is also where some people would go in and crimp instead. Crimping is another way to texturize a wig. The reason why I'm not crimping the wig is that the teasing will do the same thing that I need here. Teasing will create volume and create texture. Crimping would create volume and texture, but it will not create the same amount of volume that I need. Teasing will create a lot more volume, while teasing will also not create... With teasing, you won't get these lines that you can get with crimping. And there are ways to not get as noticeable lines when crimping and also almost making them like unnoticeable, I know. But since there's no benefit of crimping for a cloud wig, so I use the teasing instead, because teasing will create more volume, more texture than crimping. I would crimp the wig if it was a long wig. For example, I've crimped my Jill and Tifa wigs because they are long wigs, and crimping wigs can actually help a wig from not tangling. And so it's great for Jill and Tifa that have long hair, so their hair doesn't get tangled. And since they have very long hair, you can thin out the wig quite a lot while still keeping that volume to make it look thick. That's not important here because it's a short wig. So doing teasing instead of crimping will have me avoid any accidental lines and make it even poofier. And then I just comb it out, and then I go over with heat to just heat style it roughly into shape. And that's pretty much it for the rough texture stuff. So this is essentially, I don't really know where the rough texture and rough styling, rough cutting ends and where the actual styling starts, but I do this to make the entire wig getting roughly into the right type of shape before I go into the nitty-gritty details, because I am very good at getting into the nitty-gritty details and getting lost in how much time it takes. And if I do it roughly in shape first, it's gonna be a lot easier to wrap your head around everything that's going on. And before I started actually detail styling, this time I actually did separate the spikes into specific spikes. And the reason I did this is because Cloud's hair is such iconic hair, and it's really spiky. So it's really defined spikes. So I wanted it to be as accurate as possible, and that means making the spikes as they are supposed to be. I have not separated spikes for like Noctis, because Noctis has like, okay, this hair in general goes like this. This hair in general goes like this. So I haven't gone hair strand for hand strand for like super accuracy. There's very few wigs where I do that. So I rarely actually separate spikes like this. But it's like Kingdom Hearts is like the one thing. But Cloud got the special treatment today, even though this like it wrecks my brain having to do this. It's so annoying. But I did this for Cloud because Cloud's hair is so spiky and iconic that he deserves the best. And also because if I try to do something that's so it's so clearly like it's so defined, like it's so clear when it's like right and wrong. So I don't know. It was almost easier for me to do it this way than in my usual way, which is doing it more close-ish type of style, where it's like generally spiking in the way that's similar enough. For this, I actually wanted to try and get it as close as possible. And that meant separating the hairs in with tiny little clips and rubber bands, and just going into town actually doing the final styling. I feel like the styling part of the wigs are usually what people are like the most fascinated by, because it's like, oh wow, you can really see how it's like it's taking shape. For me, it's the most boring part of making the wig, because it's just cutting. It's like, it's just cutting and heat styling. It's just like, you're doing the same thing that you've done. All of the rough cutting part is just like, it's the same cutting techniques. It's the same heat. It's just the same. Over and over and over and over again. Because again, I'm still not going in with a hairspray or like anything, because I'm waiting with that until the very, very, very end. So it's just more of the same. The only thing is that when you get to like this stage of the wig, it's becoming a lot riskier, like the moves you're making. So a wrong cut will mean more, because obviously I've already rough cut it into shape, meaning that if I cut too much now, it will actually be too short, and that's really scary, which is also why when I get to this part of the wig cutting, it's usually where I start to like back off. Like I'm like, oh, maybe I need a break, maybe I do something else for a couple of days, because I start to freak myself out, like, oh, what if I mess up? And I work very, very slowly and tediously. I'm like, oh, what if I do something wrong? So it takes a lot of time. So for me, this is the slowest part of the wig making. I find it so much more fascinating doing the foundation work of the wig. But yeah, when I also try to, with this wig, I tried working with the spikes from the back, kinda, to the front. not doing like the bangs first and then working myself backwards, because the cloud butt, the choco butt, it's such a defined shape and length. It's not very difficult to grasp. So the choco butt was very easy to style first, and since I had that cut and heat shaped into shape, since I knew that that was already done, it's kind of easy to just do the spikes the closest to what is already done, because then you can keep referencing to what's already done to make sure that everything fits and scale to each other. So that's why I'm working a lot of the spikes in the back rather than the front first, because it was easiest to make sure that it kept in style and scale and length to everything that was going on in the back that was already done. This is a usual way that I do it. I either work from front to back or back to front. It's an easy way to just like, if I take this spike and make sure that this spike is correct, then I just move on to this one, and I can reference this one to make sure that this one stays in reference, like in scale to this one, which is, it's just an easier way to do it for me. And for this wig, where it's not only the spikes length and the spikes thicknesses that matter, it is also the spikes directions that matter. I had to do so much back and forth with I'm thinking that one spike is done, going to the next spike, only to realize that, wait, no, I actually need a little bit more of this hair to go into this spike if it's going to be exactly accurate, and that's why it's taking so long. There was even a part where I realized that one part of the spike needed more hair, so I started sewing in more hair while I had already started doing like the detail styling, but I realized I need more hair, so I just sewed in some extra wefts, which is the amazingness of having a soft wig where it's like everything is elastic and malleable and just wefts, is that I could just sew in some extra wefts there. It's super nice. Here I actually went in with a steamer, guys. I'm not a steamer whisperer. I am very much not a steamer whisperer. I feel like steamers are very difficult to work with. I pretty much only work with steamers when I curl stuff, or where it's like I need to set the bangs or like apart or something. I don't know. I don't understand how people spike things with the steamer. It's also because I'm so used to using my hands while doing the heat styling. But the steam is like, it's too warm. Like, I'm like, don't do like me, kids. Like, I'm doing the steamer and using my hand at the same time. But it really got to a point where it was like way too warm, because there's so much more heat in a steamer than a hairdryer. So it's already warm enough trying to do this with a hairdryer, but like with the steamer, it got to a point where it's like I have to stop, because it's painful. But I used the steamer to just set everything in place. Once I had gotten like, no, like these are the spikes, like these are the lengths, like now they're set, now I'm done. I went in with the steamer just to, kind of like I had done with a hairdryer before, like I'm really setting this styling with heat now. And the reason why I went with a steamer at this point instead of a hairdryer was that, as much as I love the fact that the hairdryer has air, and I didn't want the air, because I didn't want to accidentally blow my spikes out of order, because I wanted to keep the spikes where I had put them and not mess them up. So I went in with a steamer to heat set them so that a hairdryer doesn't blow it apart. With that said, the main reason why I am doing a soft wig and not gluing the spikes or not gluing the helmet base, or basically I'm just styling it with a little heat and a little hairspray, is, and not, I haven't done like any foam cores or stuff, is because I want that realistic movement to my wig. It's one of the many reasons. Again, watch my why video to get more explanations on why I decided to do the wig that I did. But, so, I want the wig to be able to blow a little bit in the wind. But I would much rather it blow in the wind when at the con, when I had already heat set the wig first. So heat setting the wig has to be done without the air, at least. So that it, in the future, can be hit with air and bounce back into shape. So that's it. And then it is the exciting hairspray time. I use Tresemme Freeze Spray. I talk about all my tools and all the stuff that I used in the planning video, so watch that. I like it a lot more than Got to Being. I explain why in the planning video. And when I do the hairspray, I spray light mist, and then I kind of pull the hair, like when I do the shoga butt, I kind of texturize and like comb it through with my hands, and I set the hairspray with the hairdryer so that it dries into the position that I want it to be. So when I do the shoga butts, the spiky pieciness of the chocolate butt is kind of just styled with how I pull my fingers through the hair. And the more specific, like, spikes, once I do them with hairspray and with heat, I try to like guard the rest of the hair so that it doesn't get too much hairspray. But depending on what type of texture the hair needs, like for the choco butt, it needs a PC, like loose texture, so that's why I'm combing my fingers through. If I want the spike to be flat, then I spray a little bit of hairspray on it, and then I smooth down the hair, and then I go in with the hair dryer. So I kinda, after I hairspray, I create the texture that I need. Either it's smooth, I make the spike smooth, or I comb through with the fingers because I want a more fluffy texture like the choco butt, or I comb it like with a spike. And for the spikes, I hold them specifically in place where I need them to be before I set them. And when I set my spikes, I went over this again in the planning how video, so you can look there as well on my reasoning about why and how in more detail. But Final Fantasy VII it's a realistic anime game. So sure, he has spikes, but they're not solid. Like, all hairs don't meet at one point. I explain how I consider the style in that video, but what this means is that when I hold a spike, I don't hold it like this so that all hairs meet at one point. I make sure that often it's because I hold it like this, or it's so difficult to explain, but so I try to not make all the hair meet at one point. So when I spray hairspray and then I smooth it down and then I go in with a hair dryer, I make sure that not all hairs meet at one point. I like purposefully pull a little bit of the hair apart, like when I flatten it, so it doesn't all meet in the same place, and then I set it with heat. And I do this to create a more natural spike. This is for sure one of the things that I could do a specific video on if you want me to go into more detail and show more up close what I'm talking about. It's difficult to explain, I find. But let me know if you want a specific video about how I do realistic Final Fantasy spikes. Of course, this can be used for other types of hair as well, like realistic stylized hairs, kind of. Yeah, I go in crazy with scissors and stuff. what I find is that usually these types of wigs where it's like realistic anime, like my Final Fantasy wigs, they usually just get better the more I wear them, because since they are not set in stone, they of course, like, I have to do like some super quick like touch-ups whenever I wear them, but that means that when I wear the wigs, for every time I wear it, I style it into the shape that I want it to. Like I used to, I put it on, just maybe some quick heat or some hairspray, or like, oh, this is a weird little hair, okay, we'll cut him off. And for every time I wear the cosplay, that word becomes less and less, because I don't have to heat anything, because I've heat styled it so many times that it's like I don't need to anymore. It just plops into place. Noctis is for sure like one of those wigs where it's like there's so many times that I've put on that wig and just like a random hair is just like, what is this random hair doing here? Like, why he's refusing to be put in place, and I just cut him off. And for every time that I wear Noctis, those kinds of tiny fixes become less and less, and I don't have to do them as much anymore. So they just become better and better. So I'm sure that I will touch up stuff on this cloud wig whenever I wear him, and he will maybe not look the same way when I wear him next time. And you just kind of find out what you want and what you like once you wear the wig. And for me, example with Noctis is that when I styled the wig on the wig head, I didn't realize that I had pulled like the side hairs, like his side hairs is supposed to be like this, going outwards. I had pulled it too far back, and I didn't realize until I put it on my head. So when I put it on my head at the con with the cosplay, I was like, oh, it's not giving the right silhouette. So I'm just pulling it a little forward and blasting it with some heat. So it's like, it kind of just gets better and better the more you wear it, because that way you're just going over and over it. But of course, the more love I put into it the first time, the less we'll have to put into in the future. But that's honestly like, that's kind of it. I purposefully kept the big main spike kind of long. I don't know if it's maybe too long. I think it might be a bit too long for Rebirth, because they kind of nerfed his hair. I don't want to accidentally cut it too short, so I will wait to see how it looks once I've done like a makeup test. Oh my god, I still haven't done a makeup test. Is that something you're gonna see? Let me know. But like, that's it. Thank you. I hope, I don't know, if you managed to get through all of this, what a champ. I really enjoy making tutorials and talking about wigs, so please let me know what you want to hear more about, if there's anything you're interested in. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I'm very proud of the result actually, and I can't wait to try the wig on with the proper makeup and doing like a proper like cloud cosplay test. I will most likely do a casual cloud cosplay first and foremost before I try to make a real cosplay, because I'm a bit nervous about that. But I really hope it will turn out good. I don't know, I hope so, at least. But anyway, thank you guys for sticking with me throughout this video. And I don't know what the next video will be. It will maybe it will be like a super compilation of all the clips that I have of the cutting. Let me know if there's anything you want me to dive deeper into, let me know. If you want me to talk about how I thought and planned another wig that I've already done, let me know. Just let me know what you want. I want to keep doing videos because this is so much fun, and I hope you think it's fun too. So we can see each other again. Bye.